A completely black frame with no visible content.
He is our mentor and our teacher. And
You tell. Is he here?
He'll be here tomorrow. He'll be here tonight. Yeah.
All right. Well, if not, tell him howdy from Candy.
From Candy.
We trained out at West Virginia with the cultural. There was we did a circuit of 3 days. We traveled around West Virginia with the cultural. Either the Cultural Alliance or the State Preservation Alliance, something like that.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
you guys have a great program. It's good.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We're trying to do our part by talking up just a hair.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think they're up and coming. I really do. There's good research coming out of there.
We've got a beautiful region. I just love your state.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry not to be there right now, I gotta tell you. Omaha's a big difference, but I love it too. It's something about every place you get.
Where do you work? Well, you'll tell me.
Carissa, what time do you have? Is this ready? It was nice to meet you, Candy.
Nice to meet you too. I'm going to hang out with Edwin here, say how more That's awfully nice of you. You can just snuggle up. I'll do it if there's a place that's probably not. I'll just put on the
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying a bar chart with an image of tall structures. An audience sits in the foreground facing the screen in what appears to be an indoor presentation space.
All right, well, don't feel like you have to stand now. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're going to be presenting Give Your Visitors the Spatial Treatment. And before I get into our names and everything, I just want to say thank you for coming. That means the world to us. We have really poured a lot into this, and we hope that comes through in our presentation today. And also, just thank you for supporting NAI, supporting NIW. It's really important to our field, and we hope to be there, for many, many years. So, big thank you. Thank you to everybody who has helped us in little secret ways. You know who you are. You are out there, so thank you for that. And so with that, I'll start with just kind of a quick introduction. I'm Christy Harlow, and I currently work for the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. And this is a quick little introduction, and we'll go on to it. And so, let me... We'll kind of move in. I'll let Heidi go ahead and introduce herself.
Okay, just a little bit about, excuse me, about myself. First off, there's some more seats up here. The two of you like to come forward. Go right ahead. There's 3 or 4 or 5 up here. There's more seats if you'd like to come on up. Don't be shy. My name is Heidi, and I just graduated from West Virginia University with my master's in recreation and parks. And I have a bachelor's degree in geography, which is what got me interested in maps in the first place. And I worked for a short time, summer seasonal, at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Montana. So that's sort of my interpretive background. And I focused my master's thesis research specifically on geographic interpretation, and a lot of that in our presentation comes out of that. So I'll turn it back over to Carissa.
So, as you can see, I'm Christy Harlow there. I'm pictured in front of our illustrious map of our illustrious mobile outdoor exhibit, the Core Discovery 2, which the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail has been heading up for the past 4 years and just put to bed. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. A little bit about me. I grew up in Louisiana. I got a BS in Human Resources from the University of Louisiana, so I'm a raging Cajun. And then I did my master's work at West Virginia University. I'm also wrecking parks. And we we got through that together. That's something that is really cool. That's how we kind of established our friendship. And I'm the theme junkie. Heidi's the map junkie. I'm the theme junkie. If they're trying to do something without a theme, I get really weirded out by that. So you can see that in here quite a bit. But just to give you.
A person in a dark shirt stands beside a projection screen displaying images of an interior space. An audience of about a dozen people sits facing the screen, listening to the presentation.
A little bit of background of where we're coming from there. That's our story. And where did we come up with all this? Walking around the gym at the Student Recreation Center at West Virginia University. So exercise can lead to some really good things. And with that, I want to talk just a hair about the recent Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail exhibition that was going on. We just put this to bed, but the point of it is I'm going to use it for an example and a touch point throughout this program. So I'm going to give you a little background. 200 years ago, Lewis and Clark traveled across the country and came back. There's a really huge key in what they came back with. They came back with
a person wearing a blue shirt and lanyard stands speaking near a whiteboard, facing an audience seated in chairs. Several audience members are visible from behind in the foreground.
Came back, but we're going to save that for later. This is what our exhibit looks like from a bird's eye view. And the thing about Core 2, which is really special, is that it was a mobile national park. We actually went to different communities, set this thing up. We experienced the landscape of the Lewis and Clark Trail, which is no easy feat, being that it crosses 11 states with its western legacy, and if you want to talk about eastern legacy, well, it gets bigger. This exhibit was actually set up in Albuquerque in 2005, so we've been here before. And it is heralded by that potato chip looking tent right there called the Tent of Many Voices. And inside of there was something going on that was pretty unique and pretty special for the National Park Service. We invited speakers from all different cultures, all different walks of life, all different agencies to come in there and speak freely about their connections to the trail, to the story, to the landscape, and to their locale. That is pretty amazing. We're putting our name on something, and yet we did not have anything to do with it. And so with that, kind of gives you just a little feel for what Core 2 was. We traveled for 4 years. We just ended in September. And at the end of the day, we hit 93 communities across the U.S. And we also heard over nearly 5,000 presentations in there. So you want to talk about getting spatial and geographic, go to the source, go to those cool places. But with that, no good presentation is possible without a theme. And so I didn't want to hide our theme. You know, sometimes you don't just bring it out and say it, but this is what we're striving to do today and here. We want to kind of encourage you to think about geographic interpretation. We want you to take this home to your site, to your place where you work and you're doing these things. We want you to think about the power of a map, and we're going to back this up. We're going to give you some good things that will really bring this home. And really, it's about stories. And for NIW here, we are sharing the stories. We want to help you share the stories of your landscape. And so, where are we going? I'm going to give you that little outline to help you kind of understand what we're going to do today. We'll start with a virtual tour of Albuquerque. It's going to be geographically based. Then we're going to give you the little nuts and bolts and science of the case for geographic interpretation. We'll go over a little bit about how we learn from maps, and then we'll talk about map design. So when you go home and you look at the map at your site, you may pop up with some really good ideas after that. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Heidi, who is our virtual tour guru on this collaboration.
We've had a few more people come in, so please come forward. There's a couple of seats here and a couple of seats over here. I want you to be comfortable. I know it's after lunch, so if your neighbor starts to fall asleep, just give them a little elbow for me. I'm going to start off by giving you a little virtual tour of the Albuquerque area.
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying an aerial photograph, gesturing while speaking to an audience seated in front of them. A whiteboard is visible on the left side of the room.
And part of the reason that I'm doing this is to let you know that this is a resource that you can use at your site. I used a program called NASA World Wind. Has anybody heard of this before? One person? All right, well, good. We're 2 people. We're introducing something a little bit new. It's a lot like Google Earth. How many people have seen Google Earth? Okay, a lot of you. The problem with Google Earth is that it's a commercial application, and so many of you, if you work at government sites, you may have been told you can't use it. NASA Worldwide is very similar, but it's a government application and it's completely free, and so you're welcome to use it at your site. I'm going to use this initially to orient ourselves within the landscape, and then we're just going to quickly explore how the geography of the Albuquerque area has really made this city what it is today. So while I am...
A person stands at a podium presenting to an audience seated in the foreground. A projection screen behind them displays the word Albuquerque in blue text. A flip chart with handwritten notes is visible on the left side of the room.
Going out with this, I'll just share a little bit with you about this program that I used. You can use it interactively right on the internet, so if you have a computer terminal set up in your site, people can use this real time. I had to record this video actually because they don't have internet in these classrooms, so it gives you both those options, whereas Google Earth, the free version, you're not able to record any of the images that come off the website. Since we're from all over the country, is anybody from outside of North America? One person? Okay. Well, a couple of people. I apologize then that this doesn't encompass everybody, but for the most of us came from somewhere in North America. All right. Here we go. We're going to zoom in to this lovely planet that we all know as planet Earth, right into North America and to the desert southwest. That little star right there in the middle is centered right on where we are at this moment, the Albuquerque Convention Center. You're going to see the colors change. We're going to be looking at some high resolution images of that city of Albuquerque, and we're going to zoom from outer space all the way right down to the Albuquerque Convention Center. Anybody recognize that place? Right, just to orient you a little bit, this is the Eastern Complex, the Western Complex, which is where we are right now, and the plaza that's outside. So now you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like from a bird's eye view. And we'll even see some pictures kind of up close here.
Oh my God. These pictures are all from the whirlwind?
The satellite images are the ones I just showed you. I inserted from a website called Local Live. What the website gave me?
What's it called?
Local Live. And we're going to be handing out something later that will have these websites on there for you.
Oh,
Okay?
great.
So as we're zooming back out again, trying to get your bearings, do you see maybe the hotel you're staying in? Or the road you drove in on to get here today? Perhaps you can see where you parked your car. These images aren't real time, so you wouldn't be able to actually see your car. The road across the top, that's Lomas. Anybody have any idea what this road is? Route 66, right. Okay, so that gave you a little overview of the city, and now we're going to travel down to Old Town. How many people have been to Old Town right now? Several people, good. Once you get out of here today, go down there, have a margarita, kick back, and enjoy it. Old Town, when was Old Town established?
A person stands beside a projected image on a screen showing a computer window with nested rectangular frames. An audience seated in the foreground faces the screen and speaker in what appears to be an indoor presentation room with burgundy walls.
300 years ago. This is the birthday of Albuquerque this year, so please wish it a happy birthday. Now we'll get a few shots of the San Felipe Church and the plaza there in the front. Have y'all seen that, the ones that have been down there? Okay. If you go down there, remember these pictures. As we zoom back out again, I want you to notice where Old Town originally developed. On the left here, you're going to see in a minute the Rio Grande River, which flows through here. There have been many, many cultures in the Albuquerque area, from the Pueblos to the Spanish to the American and many, many others. They've all shared one common need, and that's water. If you haven't noticed already, we're in the middle of a very hot, dry desert. It's not so hot right now, but it can be. Look at the size of Albuquerque now. Quite a bit larger than Old Town originally was 300 years ago. The Rio Grande River does not supply enough water for the people of Albuquerque. What we're going to look at now is we've sort of zoomed out to a different scale here. We're looking at a landscape scale, and we're going to see how the geography of this area has enabled all of us to be here today. Albuquerque wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for the geography of this area. So right now what we're going to do, we were looking at a bird's eye view of the landscape. We're going to sort of rotate that up. And we're going to see the landscape from sort of an oblique or a side view. Does anybody know what this feature is here? Sandia Mountains. We'll see how many people were at the presentation this morning. Do you remember what Sandia means?
Watermelon.
Right? Just to the south of that, down here are the Manzano Mountains. What does that mean? Apple. I encourage you this week to catch a sunset and look at these mountains at sunset, because that is how they got their name, the beautiful color that they display at sunset. The Sandia Mountains, I said we were going to look at the geography of this area. They are essentially a big block of granite that popped up out of the Earth's surface and formed kind of a lip or a rim to this valley here. It's just like if you were to walk around your patio and you had a loose brick, you stepped on one side pops up and the other sinks. It's kind of the same effect. It's just a big block of granite that's popped up out of the Earth's surface. You can kind of see why the city has developed here, because that side that's raised up is very dramatic and beautiful because it's so steep. You can see on the back side that it slopes away much more gently. So again, I want you to think of this as sort of a rim or a lip on maybe like a big sink or a big tub. Now we're going to rotate our view, look out across the valley. You see the Rio Grande River snaking through the middle there.
A person in a gray blazer stands beside a projector screen displaying a landscape illustration with mountains and vegetation. An audience of about a dozen people sits facing the screen and speaker in an indoor venue.
And then out to the west, on the other side there, is what's called the West Mesa. If you've been in, say, the DoubleTree Hotel, and if you've looked out your window, can you see the West Mesa, the rim of it? Mm-hmm. Take a look. If you get a chance to get up high, you can actually see the rim of the West Mesa. It doesn't show up well in here, but this is it. This area has also been lifted up, not as dramatically as the Sandias. Have you seen any other evidence over on the west side of uplift or moving of the Earth's crust?
Volcanoes.
Right, there's 5 volcanoes that are along the skyline of Albuquerque, and those are right here. They don't show up very well in this imagery, but so if you get up into the DoubleTree or someplace high, take a look at those 5 volcanoes. They are now extinct, so don't worry. What's happened now is you have the lip on the right or on the east, and then you have this lip on the west that was formed by the West Mesa. So as the Earth lifted up and pulled apart, what happened in the middle? Right, it's kind of collapsed and sank down. Now you probably think, well, Albuquerque is really not all that deep. That's because of the Rio Grande River. We have the Rio Grande to thank for that. We normally think of rivers flowing through an area and gouging out a deep valley. The Rio Grande has done the opposite. Its main function through history has been to come through here and deposit sand, silt, gravel, and it filled up this great big trough or hole in the earth that formed here. The reason that's important is I want you to think again, we were talking about this like a big basin or a sink. Imagine now laying a towel or a big sponge in the bottom of that sink. There's lots of little porous areas and air holes, and what does it do? It fills up with water, right? It trickles down from the Rio Grande and fills up with water. It's formed a great aquifer beneath Albuquerque. So the reason I wanted to show you this was that it's the geography or the arrangement of these features, the mountains, the mesa, the Rio Grande River, that have allowed that aquifer to form. Albuquerque receives 100% of its water from this aquifer. So, next time you take a shower, turn on the tap, think about that. It's the geography of this area that's allowed you to do that. Otherwise, there just probably could not be as many people in the city as there are. With that in mind, it's not an unlimited resource. It's renewable, but not unlimited, so please try to conserve a little bit if you can. So that's the end of my video here. We've looked at how the Sandia Mountains on the east, the West Mesa, and the Rio Grande River, how they're particular spatial arrangement has created this very valuable resource for people here. So with that,
A person stands near a projection screen displaying a landscape image of rolling hills and sky. An audience of approximately a dozen people sits facing the screen in a dimly lit indoor space. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible to the left.
back to the PowerPoint. And I don't know if we mentioned at the beginning, but if you have questions during the presentation, if you could jot them down and we'll address them all at the end. That way we can make sure we hit everything.
Okay, and just to check if you were listening, who remembers what manzana means? Okay, all right, somebody raise their hand and scream it because I have giveaways. All right, Apple, you're a student, you need things, right? Okay, all right, Cynthia. All right, there we go, we got a watermelon there. Okay, there you go, you got to write home about your tour of Albuquerque. Okay,
what's Mesa mean?
Table. Okay, somebody. Well, that's okay. We'll be friends. And we got one more.
Route 66.
He just read my mind.
So what we're trying to get across in this presentation is that geography is important because what happens wherever you guys are, what happens is directly related to where it happens. And this is just a little side view if you're having trouble visualizing the aquifer. There's the West Mesa, San Diaz, Rio Grande, and the aquifer. All right, so at that point, I will turn it over to Carissa.
A person stands at a presentation area facing an audience seated in chairs. A projection screen displays a blue horizontal line. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible on the left side of the room.
It's all me? Okay, well, thank you for coming and, of course, giving us a chance to give you a little bit of that spatial treatment. We wanted to promise you a little spatial today, so there we go. That's kind of part of our goal there. But we've got to get into the nuts and bolts, and we've got to make the case for this. With that research background, we're trained to do it, so we've got to do it. And we want to start with the big picture, and that's just geography as an idea. Geography is related to everything. It doesn't really matter. And so I love to look at this and think of the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, how we can all somehow find a relationship to Kevin Bacon. We can, but we don't have time for that today, but we can. Well, geography is like that, but it's even better. It's like 7 degrees, like quadruplex. So remember that. This is a good thing for you, and everything is going to come back to this. I don't care what site you're working at. Geography has played a role there. It's really important because so many of us are trying to interpret large landscapes these days. We're trying to talk about these really big scale ideas. And particularly, habitat corridors, a fire regime. I mean, if I'm just, a regular visitor, that's really hard. I'm not a regular visitor, I guess, anymore, and it's still really hard. So this is the kind of stuff that we need to talk.
A person wearing a blue cap and vest stands speaking to an audience seated in chairs facing a large blank screen. Several audience members with brown hair are visible from behind in the foreground.
How can we do this better? This is not just limited to natural phenomena, cultural landscapes, all the new heritage areas popping up. How are we going to sell this idea? Because it's hot right now, so we got to think about this. And battlefields are totally included in this, ecosystems, it doesn't matter, seashore, you name it. We are all part of this really big landscape, and it has contributed to why our site's important. And let's face it, we preserve the sites for a reason. And so with that, thinking back to that geo, you guys have probably all seen this. When there's something that's a really hot term, you attach it to everything. Kind of like, extreme, excedrin, FedEx. Well, that's backwards. But still, there's these things where there's these catchphrases. Geo is no different. We put that little prefix on there, and oh my goodness, we've invented a new term. And so geotourism, I like to put this definition up there. It's really nice. National Geographic sums it up quite well. And I think to me, this is the kind of stuff we really want to talk about. You've got to have local buy-in. And I love how this definition encompasses that idea. Get that local landscape flavor going on. And so we thought we would be bold enough to propose a new term, because that's what interpretation means, geo-interpretation. But really, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to think about this. We are in the business of fostering connections. That's what we do. And so we want to propose, okay, let's keep doing that, but the particular attention to geographical aspects, landscape aspects. Let's take a look at maps and some other tools that you can use. Today we're going to concentrate on maps. Almost everybody here's got one. We've all seen one. We're going to go the map way. But there's a strong need for this. And really, you didn't think I could get this in there, but I did. Oh yeah. Lewis and Clark have a lot to do with a map. I love this. This is from a rest stop in North Dakota. But the story of a map really does start it all. Think about where you are when you don't have one. Put yourself in those shoes. That's a bad place to be. And so really, just a little info about Lewis and Clark here. When they were kind of beginning their planning for the journey, they're getting ready to leave, it's 1803, and they're putting this all down. This is the best available map they have to look at the time. I know it's kind of tough to see, but I'll give you a few little landmarks here. On your far left there, you've got the Pacific coast. Right here, we've got a range. Anybody know what mountains those are? Rocky Mountains. I want you to remember what those Rocky Mountains look like. And then, right here, we've got the Great Lakes. What is glaring at you on this map? You know that whole lack of information there? No big deal, right? Well, that's really important. And so Lewis and Clark have a huge amount of things on their plate. But one of the big things that come out of this expedition is a map. And so Clark is the token cartographer of the map. He is a man in that sense.
Two people stand beside a projection screen displaying a mostly blank slide with some images at the top. An audience of approximately 15 people sits facing them. A whiteboard with handwritten text is visible on the left side of the room.
He's doing all this with very, very simple tools. He's got a sextant out there. He's got 5 compasses because he keeps breaking them. He's got a chronometer that, well, it just kind of goes up in North Dakota area, I believe. So it's, he's got problems, but he perseveres. And if you notice right here, once again, on the far left-hand side there, you've got the Pacific coast. Look what happens to those Rocky Mountains. What a difference it makes when you think about the landscape. You actually go out and experience and then try to translate that back. I can't believe those guys ever forgot going over them and coming back over those guys again. They're pretty prominent. And you see a lot of other information on there, waterways. If we had a magnifying glass, we could even see the names of tribes that they met along there. And we would also see the reputable X number of souls on this map. What's really special is how accurate this is. And this is something we still need to strive for today. This map is accurate within 40 miles of today's redone GPS version of the Lewis and Clark Trail. Wow. Okay. That's what I was thinking. I'm not going to try to do that with the sextant anytime soon. But with the map, once you have it, you've got this great place. You can go there. You can find the treasure. And think about it. Once we have the map, where can we go? So we're going to go there now. A little bit about how maps and visitors are going to interact, and I will turn it back over to Heidi.
All right, I have a quick question for all of you. Most of you just arrived this morning, maybe a day or 2 ago. How many of you have looked at some form of a map since you've been here? Oh my, most people in here, okay? Now, how many of you have already, excluding these programs that you've been to, because this is an interpretive conference, how many of you have gone out and sought an interpretive exhibit or program so far? Okay, very good. You'll probably notice most of the room raised their hands in map. Not that many people have seen a program or an exhibit yet. I promise this is the only graph we have in this slideshow, but I wanted to make a point. This was done at Yosemite National Park. You guys have all seen these national park maps that they hand out. 90% of visitors say that they use this resource. Now look all the way down at the bottom. 8% of people say they go to talks or programs. 24% say they go and look at exhibits. 90% look at the map. Okay, so this is an interpretive opportunity that we should not be missing. This may be the only thing your visitor looks at. And maps are everywhere. They're tacked up on every trailhead, they're in the brochure racks. Maps are everywhere. They're on the website. They're in the local tourist guides. Maps are everywhere. And so we should really be focusing on them as an interpretive tool. So let's just look.
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying a bar chart, addressing an audience seated in rows facing the screen. A flip chart with handwritten notes is visible to the left. The room has dim purple lighting.
Really quick at what a map is. Now this may seem a little simplistic, but this is going to be important a little bit later, so bear with me. A map is basically just a picture, and it's made up of a bunch of little dots, little lines, and a bunch of shapes. And those dots represent places, the lines represent roads or trails, the shapes tend to be areas of land cover, like a lake in the middle of that one. What we're trying to get across here is that landscape has a meaning of its very own. That large landscape has a meaning. You probably wouldn't have mapped it in the first place, or you wouldn't have preserved it in the first place if that landscape didn't have a meaning. It could be cultural, it could be historical, natural, even an urban area could have meaning to it. Has anybody ever heard of a doodle? Not one person? One person, all right. These are commonly made for kids, but a doodle is a picture that just is made up of a bunch of dots, lines, and shapes. And it doesn't make any sense until you get a clue. It's like a puzzle. Oh, she got a prize for being the only one.
That's rare, man. That's rare.
This is an example of a doodle. It's hard to tell what it means just looking at it. Does anybody have any guess? Oh, you got it. It's a skier standing at the top of a ski jump.
Nice was the face.
Very good, very good. All right, we have a couple more. What do you think number one is? Any guesses?
It's like, is it a shark in Mickey Mouse?
Yes. It's a shark leaving Disneyland. Very good, yeah. All right, how about number two? Yeah, but these guys are good. They're hardcore.
Part of an abacus.
All right.
It can mean something different to everyone, but we're looking for the meaning that the artist had when they drew it. This is a bear climbing a tree.
Oh my God, I didn't see that.
So what we're trying to say is that the map is like a doodle. It's got all these little dots and lines and shapes and colors or whatever. But people look at it and they don't know what it means. You've got to give them a clue to what that map means. They will make more sense if you provide visitors with clues to their meaning. So this kind of begs the question, well, how exactly do people learn from maps? How do they learn about large spaces? It's basically a three-step process. These are fancy terms that geographers have come up with, but it's really pretty simple. We talked about a map having dots, lines.
A person stands speaking to an audience seated in a dim room. A projection screen displays a mostly blank light blue slide. A flip chart on the left shows handwritten text.
Areas. Well, the process that we learn about large spaces is kind of similar to that. We learn landmarks first, then we tend to learn routes, and only over time do we develop what's called survey knowledge. And that's just sort of the knowledge of a landscape or an area as a whole. And I know some of you are furiously taking notes, and just so you know, a lot of this is in the article that's in the source book as well, so if you missed some of this, it's in there. Yeah?
Where does sense of scale fit into this?
Sense of scale?
As far as your knowledge of maps, because I always found that what visitors lack is that sense of scale. You know the scale's down here in the corner.
Correct. Part of what we advocate with using maps and interpretation is the fact that people don't have map skills. They do have a hard time with scale. And this is one way, geographic interpretation is one way that you can encourage people to look at different scales. So that's a very good question, because there's very small scale and very large scale. So just to define those a little bit more, landmark knowledge is simply your ability to recognize places, landmarks, the church on the corner, that type of thing. You're able to describe what it is and why it's meaningful or significant. Route knowledge, and I'm going to test you on this, so pay attention, all right? This is knowledge of routes or paths. It's very simple. That just means that you know how to get someplace. You know how far to go and where to turn to get there. This is the one that's harder. This is where you comprehend the overall layout of an area. You understand the different spatial patterns or the relationships of different places to one another. You're able to give people directions, you're able to figure out shortcuts. This is the tough one. Now, I said I was going to test you. What level of knowledge has this child achieved? Root knowledge.
He knows it from his school.
Okay, good. She's achieved landmark and she's achieved one higher. Root knowledge. Who said root knowledge? Somebody did.
Somebody
I think I heard it from over there first.
Okay. Do you want to give them
That was our sort of our grand prize.
Oh, in honor of being Route 66 and guessing the word route correctly, we would like to give you the proper traveling gear for all your other adventures along the Mother River Road. Or you can sell it after due to the auction.
It's immersed.
It really looks good. The important thing to remember about it, the important thing to remember is that this is
A person in a gray blazer stands beside a projection screen displaying a mostly blank slide with images at the top. An audience of roughly a dozen people sits facing the presenter in a dimly lit indoor space. A whiteboard is visible on the left wall.
step-by-step process. We usually identify landmarks first, and we do this quickly, generally. We identify a few landmarks and then how to get between them. Think about when you got here to Albuquerque, you probably figured out where the airport is, the hotel, the convention center, and the local bar, right? And then you figured out how to get between them. Okay, maybe the bar. But that survey knowledge is really tough to achieve. And so geo-interpretation can help you get there because it gives you more experiences to help you learn that landscape in that large-scale place. So, turn it back over to Carissa.
So let's get into this. Let's start creating our maps in an interpretive way. And so the map design process, we are adapting it from Sam Hamm's Environmental Interpretation Bible, much used. We love it. And he has a great method in here for planning and preparing exhibits, very simple. And so there are just a few steps, and we'll do them real quick, and then we'll get into them. One, got a theme. Before you design, have a theme in mind. Take that home with you. That's a good start. The type of map that you're trying to look for here. Is it handheld? Is it something big? Is it something little? There's a lot of things to talk about there. The levels of information that you're going to include. The design, again, you'll see more about that when we get to it. The text, do you include it, do you not, where do you put it? What do you want to do with that? Visuals, what kind of graphics are you going to go with here? And there's some really good styles there. And then finally, interaction. You really want to plan for this. You know, it doesn't just happen on its own. You guys know that in life. I mean, they say luck, preparation means opportunity, so you got to prepare. And so we're going to rock onto here, and we'll start out with theme, and I can't believe this is my slide. Oh my gosh, but no. This is it. I like this example right here. Give St. Helens a little props there. This is one of their waysides, and it's got the thematic title. At the very, very minimum, put a thematic title on your map. Take the few extra minutes, come up with a good one. Because if all they're looking at is the map, and they're trying, the dad's leading the family around and the mom's leading the family around, then they have something there to key in on really quickly. That's great. Give them that 3-second advantage there. I like it. It shows the landscape. It shows it from an oblique view. And if you've actually been to St. Helens, you would recognize this because it's on the viewing deck. So you're standing on the patio, you're overlooking it. We can't do this with all things, but with a wayside, particularly important. Make sure that's a part of the view. Themes are something that we can sometimes get muddled up in and argue about because there's a lot of different little schools of thought if they're all related. So I've got a few different ideas on here. Essentially, you need one sentence, a complete sentence, that's concise and to the point. If your theme is bordering on 22 words and you want 2 sentences, re-evaluate what you're trying to do.
A person stands on the right side of an indoor room, speaking to an audience seated in chairs facing a projection screen. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible on the left. The projected screen shows a mostly blank light blue display.
You'll get a clearer picture, and with that, you've got that orientation that's where you can go. These are all related though. Ham, NPS, Lewis, anybody. The big idea there too is try to include a universal concept, try to include something everybody can key in And I know that's repeat, but it never hurts to hear it. And so I want to encourage you, please get enlightened here. Put a thematic title on your map. Fight for that. And you know why? We had an incredibly hard time finding an authentic fold-out map, the thing that you're handing out left and right, front and backwards, with a thematic title on it. We looked. I had the privilege of being at the Midwest Regional Office and access to 1 billion brochures. It wasn't there, guys. So, finally, somebody read my mind, and I was so happy. And it was Glacier Bay National Park up in Alaska, so we have some fans out there. And they just went through this whole big process where they developed a map. They went through Harper's Ferry, and you know what? They said, oh my gosh, we're going to have a theme with this map. And even better, they pulled out some little vignettes to kind of give it a little more in depth. And they got a thematic title on there, and I was so happy because I thought, I work for this agency, I really hope we have one map right there with the thematic title on it. So I think Glaciers Retreat and the Land Rebounds, hey, that works for me because that's a step in the right direction. So try to include that, please. And then with Lewis and Clark, we found some different things, different ideas about this. What are you really trying to do with your map? This map right here, take a look at it, take a look at the one on the wall. They are the same map. There is a difference on them though. And the difference results from some input from people who were visiting our exhibit. Many of our American Indian partners were kind of concerned that we didn't really highlight their culture. And that was a big problem. And so you want to talk about the landscape and you want to talk about the scale of things, and yet we missed out the people. That's a huge problem. And so Lewis and Clark said, well, what can we do? We can't redo our whole gigantic tent, but we can make a patch map, and so we did. And we hung that up over it. And there are some words on there. And so don't be afraid to use text on your map. There's nothing wrong with that. And so here's Ranger Trim pointing to where we were, Warm Springs, Oregon, when that switch happened. And so with that, we'll throw it back over to Heidi and give you a little bit of info on map types.
Once you have your thematic title in mind, then the next decision you have to make is what type of map am I going to have? Am I going to have a flat map? Am I going to have a model, a topographic model, maybe some sort of an animation that is on a computer screen, that type of thing? And you need to decide the size of your map. I know you've all seen the brochures where the map is like 2 inches by 2 inches. Okay, it's very hard for a visitor to take that and to translate that into huge land.
A woman in a gray blazer stands beside a projection screen displaying a mostly blank light blue slide with a small image at the top. An audience of about a dozen people sits facing her. A whiteboard with handwritten text is visible on the left.
That it represents. Now, I understand that there are budget constraints. But here's an example of a map that attempts to do that. This is the Columbia River Gorge in Oregon. And they've taken that and they put it on a great big piece of paper. And it's beautiful. It gives you a much better sense of the landscape than some little tiny 2 inch by 2 inch map can do. You need to decide how the map will be oriented. It does not take very long for a visitor to look at a map and get confused. The key is to orient it to the visitor and the landscape. You do not have to put north at the top of your map. Okay? Now notice that these two are standing in a building that's kind of T-shaped. One of these is oriented to the environment and one of them is not. Which one is oriented? The right one. The right one. See how it's shaped just like the area? That other person has to look at that map and mentally rotate it, or kind of do one of these things to figure out where they need to go. Right here in the convention center, I've seen this. They've got the convention center map on both sides, and I know I've been lost all week. So here's an example of an upside down map. This was at a trailhead. The parking area is at the top. Okay, we've got the map oriented to the north. What happens? You get out of the parking area, you walk across the street, and you're standing here at the trailhead. You are now facing south. This map was hanging on the trailhead, and I stood there, and I thought the trails were behind me because of the way this map was oriented. So think about that. When you make a map, it might just be a matter of hanging it on the right wall, printing it the right direction. You do not have to put north at the top of your map. Here is a map from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. it's the northern entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains, and so they've made their map oriented to the south because people are coming in from the north. And that really, I guess the point I want to make here is that people associate the top of a map with forward movement. When you have a map, you think of the top as being forward. It's just, they've done research on this. It's a fact that people associate that with forward movement. So think about where your visitor center is. That's probably where the person's going to get the map. So put the visitor center at the bottom of the map and then have them go out into the landscape. A couple other cool things about this map. Most maps are bird's eye views where you're looking straight down. If you can get a little bit of an oblique or slanted view, it gives it a real three-dimensional effect, and that's how we think. So you can see these buildings are drawn sort of three-dimensionally. You can actually see the physical shape and size of the buildings. And we'll have
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying an aerial map or architectural layout. An audience of about a dozen people sits facing the screen in a dimly lit indoor space. A whiteboard with handwritten text is visible on the left wall.
I have that map here, so if you want to look at it closer afterwards, you can. So once you've got your theme, and you've finally decided the type of map you want to have, how big it's going to be and all that, you need to consider the levels of information that you're going to provide with your map. I think of a map as an exhibit with too much text. We've all seen those exhibits that have huge long paragraphs, and you just walk right by those, right? A map is very similar. You're putting tons of information all jumbled together, and people are just like, it's way too much information. Break it down, just like we do. We chunk that information in little bits and pieces for people with text. Break it down. Show locations, then show routes, then show whatever geographic concept you're trying to get across, a watershed, battlefield, etc. Here's an example from Lewis and Clark of just a simple route map. So moving along to design, I'll turn it back to Carissa.
Okay, this is a real life situation here. This map, really what you want to know is this is Ocracoke Island, it's a barrier island off North Carolina for Cape Hatteras National Seashore. I got to be seasonal there. I also found out a really big problem. We need to be accurate. Remember how William Clark was accurate within 40 miles with that map? It's amazing. This map, as best as we could tell, we've been handing out since 1978. As best as I can tell, we've been copying it since before that. And the problem was, we would give this to a visitor, and they would instantly say, but you know what, when I came in on the ferry, I didn't see that hook on the end. And then you had to be like back paddling, sorry, you know, oh yeah, that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. So you're thinking, oh my gosh, I had this big problem. And you think, well, maybe my site doesn't change as much as a barrier island. To really take a look, things change all the time. I mean, we know that's a constant. I mean, that's a great universal concept. We can't think of anything that would change. It's good, it's safe. But this is a problem. So we didn't have a budget. We had 2 seasonals and a lead there. That's it. Ocracoke Island is basically unstaffed during the rest of the year. And so what we did, I took it into Photoshop. I cleaned it up. I took out all those nasty little marks all over it, and I took off the hook and I made it a fist, which is actually what it looks like. And you know what? That was a lot better. It's hard enough being a visitor in a new place. It's worse when you hand them a map that's wrong. So make sure, take a look at things and do it, and clean it up. Don't hand out things that look like that. That's really bad. And so just give you an idea. You don't have to be a guru. Maybe you should get an intern from a graphics arts college or something. Anybody can come in and do this with Photoshop or PageMaker and clean things up. It's not that hard. Is it geographically accurate? No, but it's meant to be a representation. So I think that's okay. At least we're telling the truth. The other thing with maps is that the colors of the features in the landscape can really lie to your visitor. And you gotta think about this. So here we go.
A person holds up a green fabric while presenting to an audience seated facing a projection screen displaying an image. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible on the left side of the room.
We've got a nice topo bandana of glacier. What do you guys assume is green? Trees? Okay. Forest? Well, what if you didn't really know squat about glacier and this is just anywhere? You might think that's grass, field, plants. I mean, you got no idea. What about brown? Blue? Water. Okay, blue's pretty standard. But then you have to throw in that little glacier problem here at Glacier, you know? There's no snow on this map. So be really truthful about what you're doing and think about that. And the relative size of symbols is very key. If you put the big old star next to something on there, and you make it a really big font, it does exactly what you wanted to do. It draws the attention right there. And somebody assumes that that's more important than something else. So be really careful and be really be cheap about how you use that. Don't go overboard because people get confused really easily. The other thing is, we got a few things we need to talk about here. One is we need to talk. If you're going to do a map, talk to other people about it. You need to show it to other people, so you need to test it too. So we're going to talk. We got to test it on other people. I mean, this is really easy stuff, but so often it doesn't happen. And then finally, we got to think about text. So often we just think, oh my gosh, map is already overloaded anyway. We're not going to put text on it. Yet there are times when that's truly appropriate and good to explain. A typical Park Service handout, there is text included on here. Well, if you're writing about what you see on the map, depending on what culture you're in, we're talking English here, we're going to read left to right, and we're going to typically go from up to down. So when you're describing something visually in the text, describe it that way in the map, okay? That's kind of a good little tip there. And don't be afraid to use it. I mean, I realize that the ginormous Lewis and Clark banner over there, it's a lot text heavy, but you know what? We got a little word about the culture in there, so I'm willing to work with that. And so finally, we'll get a little bit about visuals in here.
This is probably my favorite part. I really like to encourage people to put the art back into cartography. If you've ever seen an ancient map, they were beautiful. I mean, they had calligraphy and they had sea monsters on them, and they were just beautiful works of art. There's actually people that collect these and frame them and put them on their wall. I'm sorry, but today's map is boring. You go and make something on MapQuest, or you just pick up a map out of a brochure rack, it's probably pretty dull. Try using pictures. We always use symbols, little stars and squares and stuff. Why? We don't have to do that. We're being interpreters here, so interpret that landscape. You can be funny. They've used cartoons, kind of caricatures of the different places in this example. Here's another kind of cartoony example.
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying a map of the British Isles with colored regions. An audience of approximately 15 people sits facing the screen in a dimly lit room. A flip chart is visible on the left side.
If you looked at this shape on a piece of paper, you probably wouldn't recognize it, but because of the illustration, I bet you know what this is. Close? Scotland? Take a look at that skirt, or that kilt. Sorry, kilt. I'm going to get beat up for that one. You can make your map eye-catching. Draw attention to it. This is a case where they were showing a route that was all right turns. They made it into a spiral. This is very eye-catching. This is the Napa Valley in California. They've made the roads look like branches to a grapevine. Here's a case where they've taken topographic maps and looked for patterns in them. We've all done this. We go out and look for patterns in the clouds. You could do that on a topo map. And they've artistically rendered it so that it looks like an animal. This would be awesome if you were trying to interpret the landscape of a bear or a fox or some other animal. You can even extend this right into the architecture of your place. This is the Yellowstone River flowing right through the visitor center. They've taken that map and just incorporated it right into the architecture of the site. And last but not least, we're going to talk about interaction, because that's really the heart of interpretation, is getting the visitor involved. This is kind of my pet peeve, but this is always what we do when we want an interactive map. Push a button, it lights up. Push a button, it lights up. You see this everywhere. Push a button, it lights up. It's the right idea. We're trying to get the person to touch the map and involved with the map, but we can do more than this. I know you are all creative people. We can do more than this. Now, unfortunately, this would be a whole other hour presentation going through all the different interactive ideas that we have. But I prepared a handout for you that will start around. There's an entire page of interactive ideas in here, as well as the process that we went through. And there's also a page of different websites. I can email this to you. We've included a web or an email address on here. Just email me and I'll send it to you so you can just kind of click and go. because you really don't want to type all that stuff in. It has the resource that we talked about, NASA Worldwide, the local live. There's even a map of Springfield, which is where the Simpsons live. It's a really cool interactive map that I found online, so go check that out. What we're trying to get across here is be creative. Take your visitors on an adventure through your map. And with that, I'll just turn it over to you.
So really, in a final idea, I want to at least give you something that you could do next week. I want you to go home to your site and not fret over, oh my gosh, we need to update our map. I want you to have...
A person stands beside a projection screen displaying images of objects and artifacts, addressing an audience seated in front of them. A flip chart with handwritten notes is visible on the left side of the room.
And that is just simply thinking about scale, which is really important that you brought up. If you need a new idea, if you need a little jolt in your interpretive programming, try to visualize or think about your site on another scale. It's a really good trick to get a little bit of oomph in your program. It's also really cool if you have some beginning interpreters who aren't quite finding what they want to do. Tell them, well, you know what, look at it from this angle. And this is a really nice trick. So we've got the little VW man there, and I was so lucky to get this picture, I can't believe it. But we've got the full size VW man. On the far left there, you see the little tiny VW bus inside the big one. We often get stuck in that little VW bus world. This is our site, this is our place, this is what we do, and we are stuck in that box. Let's take it out bigger, let's go and tell them the whole story in a full size van. We can make that impact. And that's just a matter of thinking about scale there. Confusing a little geo-interpretation into your story. And so we want to be good interpreters, so we want to go over just what we told you, right? We did do a virtual tour of Albuquerque. Does anyone remember that? Yes. All right, we did give you a little bit of reasons why we think geo-interpretation is important and going to be a forefront thing. And then we talked about how people learn from maps, so that's always key. And then finally, a little bit about map design, and we want you to run and make your own creative ideas on that. We're kind of just in a final closing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this with you. We really do appreciate it. We want to give you something you can take home. And with that, I think Heidi and I will be able to entertain any questions that you may have. And
We have about 8 minutes for questions.
okay, yeah. Go for it.
Is there enough water coming into the Albuquerque aquifer to support this population, or are they drawing off of it?
There is a lot of debate over that. They used to think the aquifer.
Two people stand beside a projection screen displaying a diagram with blue shapes and labels. An audience of seated viewers faces toward them in a dimly lit indoor setting. A whiteboard with handwritten text is visible on the left side.
Is much bigger than it actually is, so they're still doing a lot of research into that. They do address this in city planning and that type of thing. I think currently, as long as there's like severe drought or anything, that it's okay, but they have to carefully control that and conserve water, and there's a lot of active conservation programs going on because they are on a fine line there. So it's definitely not the unlimited resource they once thought it was. Yes, and you probably know more about it.
Yeah, but I work at the Natural History Museum here, and just a little plug, I brought 2 maps that are called Albuquerque Geoscape that I added to the silent auction upstairs, so keep your eye out. And good for them, it gives the whole geographic picture of the Albuquerque area.
Thank you.
I'd just like to point out that if you ever get a chance to go to the top of the Sandia Crest, you get that bird's eye view of these mountain ranges, and it was almost like your satellite pictures. It was amazing. I was lost until I went to the top, and I really understood where all these mountains are.
Did you take the tram, or is that the best way to do it?
We drove. We drove. The tram was broke down.
Okay. I think there's multiple ways to get there.
All right, far back, sir.
I have a mapping question for you. As just, scale, when you're dealing with large areas like this, and a handout map, paper size, how big is too big? This I would not want to get out to the public.
No.
Yeah, they're going to be trying to unfold it in their car and cause a wreck.
In the Park Service, they have a certain size, and that is the max limit that they go to. So I know our Lewis and Clark Trail one is an accordion one like that, and it goes out about the width of your arm spread. To me, that's kind of the dizzy limit there. Don't want to get much bigger than that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I haven't seen any actual research on what's too big. I would just experiment with different sizes and see what your visitors prefer. This one is made to be sort of arm's length. Like she said, you wouldn't want it any bigger than that because then you wouldn't be able to hold it. So I don't know an actual answer or a scientific answer to that. If they've studied that.
Ballpark arm's length is a good one.
Right, but this one's arm's length. I think it's great.
It's pretty much
Very similar. So.
And I don't know, if you are a Park Service, Harper's Ferry, get on there. They can tell you everything about this, and there are certain templates that you can work with. Well, wait, let me go with Mike first. I promise.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to add a kind of a plug for this concept of geointerpretation. That for those of you who are also working with educators in the formal education system, the 4th grade level is the level at which almost universally across the United States geography is taught. So if you're doing curriculum-based interpretation in your site,
2 people stand beside a projection screen displaying a map or diagram. An audience of approximately a dozen people sits facing them in a darkly lit indoor space. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible to the left.
Geography is a great place to bring students into capturing the landscape approach to interpretation. And then I just also wanted to mention, I happen to work at NASA with the Landsat satellite team, which is what underlies WorldWeb. And we're very, very interested in partnering with interpretation and education. And if you're interested in that, you can talk to me or just visit the Landsat website. If you Google Landsat, you'll find it.
So I just want to add to what she said, that NASA WorldWeb site. I just really discovered it last week when I realized I couldn't use Google Earth. So I played around with it, and it's a little confusing at first, but once you get it, it's pretty easy to use. So play around with it.
They're working on making that available on the Mac as well.
Are they? Excellent. Okay.
In your research, have you found any site that's taking the map? My thought is you've got a theme on your map, you've got text that fits into that theme, and then going a step further and actually doing an orientation or a program about the map of your site. Did you find anyone doing it?
Tetons does it in their visitor centers.
Yeah.
We took an interpretive class at West Virginia University, and we were shown a video actually of a woman using the sort of the topographic model as the basis for a program. And that's an excellent way to get people involved in that map. There's also living maps. Has anybody heard of a living map? That's where they take sort of a base map and paint it on the floor or on a big sheet or a big piece of canvas and spread it out, and then you actually can crawl around the map and add little landmarks and use yarn and stuff to make streams. So there is some of that going on in programming, but we think there could be more.
That seems like a lot of stuff.
Yes.
If you read thematic about your map,
Yes.
So you can build upon it. If you've already got to have a plan for your interpretive processes, just use it there. Put those things to good use that you develop.
And I know that most of you don't have the money to go redesign your map. Build around the one you have. If you have one in your visitor center, put a thematic title with it. Try to add some visual elements to it. Try to work with what you have in the meantime until you can design that new map.
Or if you're Park Service, generally you're on a 2-year rotation to do an update. Demand that you want this thematic process. I mean, really, it's starting to happen. So call me on it.
Any more questions?
Well, and before I let you go, I want you to know that the pins on the back table are pretty special. One is, of course, the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. The second one is the Core Discovery 2 pin. You guys are getting a really special pin with that. That is something that we only gave to presenters who talked inside of the 10 and Many Voices. And so I begged my boss, could I please have a whole bunch of those? And I wanted to share that with you, so please not.
2 people stand near a projector screen displaying a diagram or technical image. An audience of approximately a dozen people sits facing them. A flip chart with handwritten text is visible on the left side of the room.
Kind of wear that with some pride. It's a pretty special thing.
And one more thing. Somebody here at the conference lent me that other map there. It's a 3D map that you use 3D glasses with. So take a look at that on your way out of town. Thank you.
Where's the evaluation still?
A person in a maroon shirt stands speaking to an audience seated in folded chairs. Behind them, a projector screen displays an aerial photograph. Several other people stand nearby in the indoor presentation space.
Now, is it when we talk about this?
What?
The land park map, the brief map.
I'm sorry?
The survey on your, so there's layers.
I saw it, yeah.
There's primary wayfinding.
Yeah, in fact, when I read it tomorrow.
It's not like this one's wayfinding. It's actually built on information and on Okay. So you can do that side by side. So it's like a
National survey of agencies. So we do a lot of, we use maps a lot.
Yeah, and we have a lot of
Exhibits. And everyone did it at computer-based, you could find them and very families would come up, adults would go to the map. Kids would go to the computer. And the other thing, in our old office, we had one of those fast maps, USGS put out, including on Shasta. And by the time I started working it, he talked about Shasta, so I really wanted to catch it. It's just something about iPhones. It's really this little human nature study.
That's a whole nother I don't know how to share. You know, we're not doing that anymore. That's one thing what they did. You're looking at
No, I didn't, I'm sorry. This was mine, I picked up yours. Oh, okay. I was just, because I'm staying in this room. I'll sit down here, that's fine. No, I'm moving on, so. Sorry. Okay. I'm not leaving this room, but I want
on the Smithsonian exhibit. Well, I'm glad to give you guys this. What's very frustrating about that is USGS and the Smithsonian exhibit, USGS was about to traffic exhibit to happen based on this book. So I don't know.